Asia-Pacific region set to become one of the world's most dynamic, the South China Sea is being transformed into a sometimes tense, often disputed body of water. China lays claim to much of the sea through its 9-dash line, while the US has made its intentions for the region known through its pivot to Asia rebalancing strategy. How the relationship plays out will go a long way to determining regional stability. Today, China Matters is joined by Dr. Zhong Fei-Tong from the National Institute of International Strategy at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences to find out how he sees this relationship progressing. Thank you for joining us, Professor Zhong.
Yes, my great pleasure.
Now, perhaps you can explain to me. China claims most of the South China Sea under its 9-dash line, citing historical evidence as proof of its sovereignty. Could you maybe help explain this historical evidence?
I think the basic meaning related to this point has two kind of issues, something different. The first is as our government claimed the traditional Chinese. Maybe we can trace back to 2,000 years ago. They discovered named islands in South China Sea. And in modern era, Chinese it has some administrative rights to this kind of islands. And the second one, I think, when Chinese government say historical record, that means we should understand the international relations in 19th century. As you might know, the concept of sovereignty was originated from the Western, especially a Westphalia system established in 1648. It's clarified the different territory, and he requires the countries respect to each other, take something equal to each other. But in East Asia, the international relation is somewhat different from the Western countries. It's a tributary system in East Asia. And in the tributary system, the territory or borderline is not so restrictedly limited to each other. It's flexibility according to your power. So I think the two basic means may help us why Chinese always claim they have historical rights to South China Sea issues.
Why is China insisting on bilateral negotiations with claimant countries instead of multilateral negotiations?
When you refer why China did not use multilateralism, I think you mean why China did not invite Japan or United States or other forces to help solve this dispute is different things, I think. Because according to China's experience, as you might know, after end of Cold War, China used its own way to solve the dispute. So, in Chinese leaders, they believe they can solve this problem used by its own way, because there is no agreement or consensus in international relations to solve territory disputes. I think in West countries, maybe not only West countries, to the basic meaning in international politics, power is maybe the best solution to solve this kind of issue. But to Chinese force, you might know the Chinese famous military artist Sun Tzu. Force is not the best way to solve dispute, because especially to neighboring countries, because we cannot separate with them. We Chinese want to solve it with consultation with neighboring countries firstly, and then if there are some good suggestion or constructive solutions or suggestion, we can listen to them and to consolidate with neighboring countries.
Now, so the Philippines is probably the most outspoken claimant country, them and Vietnam.
Yes.
And they are taking China to court at The Hague, saying that China has violated the laws of the sea. What are your thoughts on this case, and how do you think China will react if the decision goes against them, which they've already said they will pay no attention to pretty much?
I think if you trace back the record on China's issues, Chinese government submitted to United Nations, you will find that in 2006, China submitted documents to United Nations to claim China will not accept arbitration related to territory.
Right. So what's the point of UN law then if China's just going to ignore
because the UN law is not related to clarify the territory issues. It only gives some literary countries the right to claim 200 nautical miles exclusive economic zone.
Right.
So that is their main contribution to international affairs. But it's not related to territory issues.
So right now we see that the U.S. is to use, increasing its presence in the Asian Pacific region.
Definitely.
Because the region is obviously going to be one of the most important and dynamic in the coming years. So what do you make of this increased presence, and what role do you think the U.S. can play?
I think it's a long history for United States to take part in East Asia affairs, maybe since the later 19th century, when the United States opened the door of Japan. I think in 1853. So for United States, it has a very close relation with the East Asian countries. So I think it's natural for United States to play an active role in East Asia. But the area is changed. Changed very significantly. I think the United States should recognize the situation. China does not want to change the status quo or become rebelling or revolutionary. China wants to become the support, contribute to regional growth. But at the same time, if China can contribute too much to this process, why United States cannot compromise?
The South China Sea is heading to a point where something needs to be done, because these two great powers, as you say, with very different ideologies and very different viewpoints or opinions on the region, are coming together. And someone's going to have to blink first, or someone's going to have to say something, do something. Something needs to be done to smooth out the situation. Otherwise, it could escalate. You don't see that. You don't see that compromise coming.
Yeah, there are some dangers you predicted. The conflict between China and the United States lies in its, I think, lies in the United States' reputation or commitment to its alliance in its region. I think it's not the U.S. want to make a conflict with China, but its treaty commitment and its hegemonic reputation compel the United States involved in this issue. If in the near future the other regions, I guess, maybe, for example, Middle Eastern, if the Islam state if they give a very huge shock to the United States, I think maybe South China Sea is not so important. Yeah. Right. So it depends on the balance, how the United States to different regions' importance in the United States.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
Thank you for sharing your insight with us.
Okay.
谁家都干过这活儿。
我们这样做，是为了保护国家的领土跟主权不受侵犯，也保护人民的利益。个人是强烈支持的。
我觉得合理合法就好了。什么事不谈？
美国它不应该插手南海问题，因为第一是地域离着特别远，也不需要。南海的事就是南海周边的国家一起去解决，不需要它来插手。